Well, I think the left understands that if they were to put their cards out on the table and say, we believe in a huge, deep state, administrative, bureaucratic state that's run by elite experts, people don't want to buy into that. We know where that leads. At best, it leads to Venezuela or Cuba, and at worst, it leads to something like the former Soviet Union. So they can't tell us that. So almost everything that Obama did, the Benghazi mess, the Bo Bergdahl swap, the Iran deal, we were learning about some of the economic, there was always a second story, a backstory to them that he could not be transparent about, because the left believes that because they believe in fraternity, equality, egalitarianism, fairness, and the right believes in liberty and individualism, that therefore they're more noble and that any means necessary are justified in obtaining them. And that means that if Obama wanted to spy on the AP reporters or deal with the IRS in a nefarious way or change the NSA to be a political instrument, it was okay because everybody thought, well, at least the progressives thought, the aim is to make us all equal, and that's noble. So that's the problem with the progressive project. It's against human nature, and it doesn't understand the nature of people, which is unchanging since antiquity, and they don't have a message that is popular, so they have to be deceptive about it.
The left is trying to make Donald Trump into a Nazi, that he's a totalitarian. So in order to justify anything that they do against him, they make him into Hitler. So how do you break through someone's mindset that believes that, Dr. Hanson?
It's very hard, because if you ask the people who say that Trump is a fascist or a Hitler, young people a lot, they don't know who Hitler was. They have no idea of the extent of the genocide. They have no idea what fascism was under Mussolini. And so they just use these terms and they throw them out and they see what sticks. So you're dealing with largely uneducated and ignorant people who are arrogant. It's a fatal combination. And again, the idea is if you just say all, and notice how the Democratic Party is driven by the media, not vice versa. So if Bill Maher or Colbert uses a profanity or an obscenity, then people, whether it's a senator from New York or the head of, they use it. If they feel that having a transgendered restroom is an issue in Hollywood, then they adopt it. And it's very strange that you don't have people in the legislatures or the Democratic think tanks coming up with policies on taxes or housing or labor or foreign policy that drive the discussion. It's almost as if this paralyzed, fragmented Democratic Party says, what does Hollywood think? What does Silicon Valley think? What does Wall Street think? What do celebrities think? And then we're going to follow them. And so they have a lot more influence in a weird way because of television and movies and the universities than their numbers would reflect. But it's an old argument that if you call somebody these terrible names, then you'll settle or split the difference. So you get an argument with somebody and he'll say, Trump is a fascist, he's a Nazi. And you say, no, he's not. Well, don't you at least concede that he's a dictator? And then you say, okay, I'll just stop he's a dictator. And then you've said he's a dictator. So by doing this paranoid style, they're so over the top that they want to settle for 55% of the difference, which leaves Trump as pretty awful. So I think the thing that they're most sensitive to is the argument that you're very ignorant, because the left always feels they're culturally superior. But if you really don't know how Hitler came to power, you don't know how Mussolini, you don't understand what happened in Japan in the 1930s, so you don't know what fascism is. There was a reason that the National Socialist Party had the word socialist in it, and they need to realize that there were elements of National Socialism that included things like vegetarianism, radical environmentalism, radical labor agitation that they don't talk about. But if there is a fascist movement, and I'm not sure there is, but if there is to be a fascist movement, it's comprised of screaming down people on university campuses, blackballing speakers at graduation, disrupting public assemblies, getting on the internet and using profanities and trying to troll people, and being on television and adopting a profanity as sort of a normal vocabulary to excite people. That's the road to fascism. And I remember one guy told me, he was chairman of La Raza Studies program. He said, "Victor, I make $95,000 a year, Cal State Fresno." He said, "My cousin works for equal opportunity program in a rural. My other sister works for a rural health thing. And what you are saying is that all this stuff causes more problems. And I can't accept that. That would destroy our careers." So I think we got to remember there's thousands of people are invested in this industry. And it's not easy to tell people you're doing more damage than good.
Talk about what's going on college campuses and the fact that Western civilization, ancient history, even free speech are out, and political correctness, multiculturalism, and almost an infantilism is going on. Explain what's happening culturally on campuses.
That's a good question, culturally, because I think there's two or three phenomena that we see. One is this idea that with reduced family size and greater affluence among our elite, a globalized economy, people have money and opportunities they've never had, that we've got these helicopter parents, and they've said to their children, you're going to go to pre-Stanford kindergarten, or you're going to go to Harvard prep grad, and we're going to get you, and you're going to be just like a cow. We're going to brand you with the Amherst BA, the LLB, the JD, and then you're going to have a wonderful life in the coastal corridor. And so everything is going to go your way. And so we've deprived these children of muscular labor, that sense of tragedy in the world, and we put them on these campuses, and anything they don't like becomes traumatic and then requires wealthy people to adjust to it. You have to have a safe space. You have to have a trigger warning. You can't be told your Halloween costume is too provocative. And they're like kindergartens. They're absolutely ill-prepared to enter the real world. We've completely deprecated the value and noble notion of muscular labor. None of these kids know how to run a chainsaw or mow the lawn. They wouldn't want to. And so this metrosexual culture of self-indulgence and self-referent is not good. And the second thing that's happened is, under the tenets of affirmative action, we had it backwards. We should have said, we have new students coming in to the educational system, both from immigration and from legacy of civil rights. So we're going to prepare them to be more competitive than the majority as redress. And that would mean from kindergarten, we're going to have Latin programs. We're going to have English diction. We're going to have English grammar. We're going to make them memorize the great poets. We're going to make sure that minority and underprivileged kids have the basic tools. Instead, we said, you're the victims of a racist culture. Entrust your education to all of our elitists, and we're going to give you therapy. So then we put the kids on campus, and they're competing in Latinos, blacks, other underrepresented people of the past are competing with highly motivated, highly privileged Asian and white students. And they obviously feel that they're either not competitive in some cases, or they've been steered to sociology or studies courses that don't give them the tools to succeed. And out of that frustration, they turn to, I'm a victim, I need special redress, I have to have a space, a theme house, I have to live or work with people who look like I do, and it reinforces that sense of lack of confidence. And so the only way that we can give confidence to students of non-traditional is make sure that we give them the tool. I'm speaking to somebody who's taught 21 years classical languages to minority youth, and I can tell you that when I sent 50 people to Ivy League law schools over 20 years and professional schools, and usually I tried to ensure that a student who was here illegally from Mexico that was in my class and after 4 years could speak English and know Latin better than a person of any background. And I never had to worry about self-confidence. None of those students ever said they were members of La Raza, because they had so much confidence in their abilities. And yet we really shortchanged this generation. And then the final irony is that a very wealthy liberal elite who does obviously enjoy white privilege felt guilty about that. So they virtue signaled to everybody the dangers of white privilege, and they blame people in the Midwest or the white working classes who never had white privilege. People in Bakersfield or Appalachia don't have any advantage about being white. They're very poor. Their longevity is even less than some minorities. And yet we castigated them and said, you've got white privilege, even though I have it. It's basically, people who had it said somebody else had it as a way of expiating their own guilt. So you add all of that together with a system that $1 trillion in collective student debt, and an administrative class that's grown 3 times the rate of the faculty, and it's an unsustainable proposition. I think it's going to implode. We're already seeing the university implode.